Hi, and welcome to another Excel demo with Rich Kerr. In this scenario, I've constructed a tool to assist my daughter with practicing her multiplication tables. So I've set it up for 1 through 12 so she can enter the factors that she's multiplying. So if she were doing, say, 4 multiplied by 6, she would enter 4 there and 6 there. And we see the answer is 24. But we also are using conditional formatting to highlight the rows that correspond to the factors. So 4 going across, 6 going down, the intersection where they meet, that's the answer, 24. So 4 multiplied by 6 is 24. It also shows her how she could get there by skip counting 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. So she could skip count the 4s to get to 24, or she could skip count the 6s, 6, 12, 18, and when she hits the fourth one, she's at 24. So it allows her to kind of practice and see the relationships between the numbers. And I've set it to go up to 12. You could do, make it as large as you want. So I'm going to show you now how to construct something like this, and it's actually fairly simple. So here's how we do it. I'll go to a new sheet. So I'll start out with a series of numbers going down the left-hand side. So I'll say 1, 2, and I'll select both of those, and I'll take that, say, down to 12. And then going across, essentially the same thing. So we'll have 1 and 2, and we'll go across to 12. Okay. And so first what we want to do is create the formula that multiplies each of the factors, right? And really this should be one row below. So we want to kind of move that down. There we go. Because you want to be able to cross-reference 1 versus 1, like 1 times 1 is 1. Okay, that's where we start. So the factors on the left are one row below the factors going across. And then our formula is simply we're going to take this value and we're going to lock the reference to column A, right? Because that's where those factors are. And we're going to multiply it by what's in cell B2. And we're going to lock the reference to row 2, right? And so that gives us the 1 multiplied by 1. If we were to drag that across, we have 1 multiplied by all those factors, right? All the way out to 1 multiplied by 12. And then we can simply select the whole row and drag it down, right? So that gives us the entire multiplication table. I'm going to show you guys another little data entry trick too. If you've got the entire range selected like this and you're editing your formula, right? So you've got the whole range selected and you write the formula in cell B3. If you just do Control Enter, that has the same effect of entering it across and down at the same time. So Control Enter, but again, the trick is you have to have all the cells selected and then you're just in the midst of editing the upper leftmost cell. And then Control Enter fills it down and across. So just a little sidebar on that piece, right? And so then above I put in just some text, and then I left a space for the first factor. Let's say it's 3, and then the second factor, let's say that's 5. And then of course you could have the results show there too, where you'd say, okay, cell B1 multiplied by D1. Okay, so that's taking care of that math, right? Then I had a little bit of formatting for the factor row and column, right? So had some formatting going across for across the top. You can really use kind of any color scheme you want. I might even mix it up a little bit here. Okay, so that kind of sets those off from the actual data on the inside. Okay, so then I selected this range of cells, right? In fact, you could start all the way in cell A2, right at the corner between the row of factors and the column of factors. So cell A2, select that all the way across. So what I want to do is I want to make the column highlight for example, if she's entered 3, I want the row that says 3 to highlight across. If she's entered 5, I want the column that has 5 at the top to highlight across. And there's a few approaches to this. So I'm going to go with conditional formatting, and I'm going to do a new rule. Okay, and I'll say use a formula to determine which cells to format. So first, let's take care of the row that is headed by the number 3 on the side. So because I've selected cell A2, that's kind of the anchor cell that the conditional formatting formula will look to before it extrapolates the formula across. So we're going to write the formula as though we're talking about cell A2 to begin with. So we're going to say equals $sign A2, right? Because you have to lock the reference to column A. So I want to check to see if the value in A2 is equal to B1. Okay, that's where I've got my first factor. Okay. Now, you don't lock the reference to row 2 in the A2 coordinate because we want that formula to continue down all the rows, but it should always be looking at column A for that factor. So if that's the case, if what's in A2 is equal to $B$1, because you want to lock that reference, that should not shift as you have this formula going across this entire table of data. So if that's the case, let's go to Format. Let's make the cells bold, and maybe we'll make the fill color blue. Okay, so we'll click OK and OK. So we can see now that the row containing the 3 on the left is now highlighted in blue across the top. Now the next thing is I want the column that has the 5 at the top to also highlight. So I still have the same range of cells selected. It's all the data including the factors on the left column and across the top row. So I've got that selected. Conditional formatting, new rule, use a formula, and this time we'll say equals. And again, I'm starting with A2 only. This time I'm going to lock the reference to row 2, not the reference to column A, because it should be looking across row 2 all the time. So row 2 will be locked, and then we'll say equals, and I'll click on D1. And of course, when you click on it, it is anchored already. D1 is that second factor. Both coordinates, the column letter D and row 1, should be anchored. And then we choose Format, and I'll make it blue again, and the font will be bold. And we click OK and OK. So now we're getting there, right? We've got it to where the appropriate column and row will highlight. So for example, if I change that to 7, then the row with 7 is highlighted. If I change that to 9, then the column with 9 is highlighted. Okay, so now we're almost to where we were on the previous sheet, but what I'd like to do is have the ones that don't match, in essence, disappear. I only want the numbers in the appropriate row and column to be highlighted in blue, and everything else should really not even be visible. It's kind of a distraction, so I just wanted to highlight the appropriate row and column. So again, I'm gonna select just the data in the body now, because I don't want the numbers in the headers, right? So in order to make that happen, we'll add another set of conditional formatting, and we'll do it for the data in the body, excluding the column on the left and the header across the top where we're matching our factors of 7 and 9 or whatever they may be. I just want the data in the body to, in essence, disappear unless it's in the right column. So we're going to do another conditional formatting. So we'll say conditional formatting, a new rule, and in this case I'm going to use the AND function to check to see if the value in A3. Now before we were starting in A2 because I would want the entire row to get the blue formatting, right? But now I'm just doing it inside the body, so the body starts in row 3. So I'm checking to see if $A3 is not equal to B1, right? So the value in A is not 7 in this example. And, right, this is inside my AND function, $2. So you're checking column B, but now we're not we're working in row 3 actually. So we want to put this for Yeah, that's fine. Yep. We want to work in column B, and we're looking to make sure, right, we're making sure that the data in row 2 does not match 9, right? So that's correct. So we'll say format, and we'll say make that font white, and we'll choose OK and OK. And so now, I mean, the numbers are still there, of course. They've just turned white because they don't match. None of these column headings match 7 or 9, and none of these row headings match 7, right? And some of the other things that we've done is I've just done a little bit of sort of alignment formatting. So now if I change this to 10, then row 10, the numbers all show up. All the other numbers are white. If I change the other factor to say 4, now column 4, we see 10 by 4 is 40, and we also get the answer there. Now, the last thing I did was I sort of inverted. If we look back on the previous sheet, I inverted that intersection, right? So where the row and the column intersect, I made that sort of the inverse, where it was white with a, like a dark blue. So just kind of focused in or zeroed in on where the intersection happened visually. Just added a little bit more of a visual flair. So if you want to do that, you can select that entire range again. We're going to add yet another conditional formatting rule. So new rule, use a formula, except this time we're checking to make sure that the cell, the value in A3 is equal to B1, right? So it is row 10, and at the same time, the value in B2 or whatever is highlighted in row 2 is the same as D1, so is equal to. So it's basically the flip of the previous example. So I'm checking to see if A3, I'm locking on A, starting in 3, of course, because I could be way up there, is equal to B1, and at the same time, B2, starting in column B but going across, if that matches D1, that's our match. If both things are true, now we're going to flip it around. So we're going to make the font, and that could still kind of be like a dark blue, but I'm going to make the fill color white. Okay, I'm going to click OK and OK, and there you go. So now you have kind of like the inverse where the intersection happens, right? And then again, you can kind of continue to play around with that, and we see we're essentially there. A couple of other things I did in the other spreadsheets, I kind of adjusted these column widths to make them just a bit more square. Like I said, I sort of did a alignment, and I may have aligned these center as well. These could be aligned. In fact, all of it could be aligned center, and it might work well. Okay, and so now it's starting to shape up a little bit. And I also hid all the columns in the spreadsheet. So I clicked on column N and did a Control Shift right arrow, right click hide. So I hid all the columns that I wasn't using. And same with the rows. I click on row 15, Control Shift down arrow, right click hide. So I'm now hiding all the unused rows. So now it's a lot more compact. I think I had this cell black just to kind of show that that's the where the opposite side of the intersection of the row and column. And then I did a couple other things with some shading, and I think you get the idea at this point. You can just kind of play around with some shading to give yourself a certain look to your tool. Okay. Now the last thing I did for a bit of polish was I selected just the two cells where the factors will be entered, cells B1 and D1. So if I select those two cells and I right click and choose Format Cells, I uncheck the locked option. So we'll mark those cells as not locked. So then when you go to the Review tab and you choose Protect Sheet, you can tell Excel to not allow the user to select locked cells. So in essence, they'll only be able to click on cells B1 and D1 in this sheet. And you can password protect that too if you want. We'll go ahead and click OK. So now these are the only two accessible cells. The other parts of this worksheet are just locked down, and I can go ahead and just toggle back and forth between my two-factor cells there to come up with my various solutions. And again, it's really great for my second grader. She can see 3 times 6 is 18, but it also helps her to see visually the skip count functionality, counting by threes to get to 18, or counting by sixes 3 times to get to 18. And it's just sort of another way to help her visualize the numbers that she's practicing. I hope you guys found this useful. Please come back soon for another Excel demo with Rich Kerr. Have a productive day. Peace.